Hi guys, it's Debbie and welcome to a long overdue episode of What I Watched this month. First of all, cinemas here in Italy have been bringing back Sion Sono movies, so I watched two of those, Suicide Club and The Whispering Star. Suicide Club is more of the type of crime thriller that I enjoy. It is one of my favourite genres, and it follows an investigation into a series of seemingly unconnected mass suicides across Japan, with the police trying to piece together information which just gets weirder as the story moves on. I found that it has the perfect mix with just the right amount of horror, police investigation and crazy visuals thrown in there, and director Sion Sono wanted to criticize the direction Japanese society was taking in regards to the topic of suicide, what leads it to being so common and how society reacts to it. Instead, his other film, The Whispering Star, is completely different. Slow-paced, black and white, very little dialogue, set in a future in which humanity is scattered around the galaxy and we follow a cyborg delivery woman who is traveling around to make deliveries. Something which I wouldn't be too surprised in seeing Amazon doing in a few years. If you like more slow-paced, introspective stories and simple but interesting visuals, this is probably more up your alley. Cinemas here also screened a remastered version of Eyes Wide Shut, a film I'd seen multiple times at home but which was wonderful to get to see on the big screen. As I said in my standalone review, there is basically nothing I could possibly add to the staggering amounts of analysis, reviews there already are out there about this wonderful final Kubrick film. And if you haven't seen it, I would highly recommend it. Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman play a married couple whose relationship is starting to crack once they start discussing desire, and this leads Tom Cruise's character to snap and start exploring a side of society it might have been best not to enter. I'm being extremely vague here. And the last film that cinemas brought back here was Millennium Actress. I think this was actually the first time it was ever released in cinemas here in Italy. It is one of the few Satoshi Kon movies I've never seen. I knew nothing about this film, only that it was about an actress. And I wasn't wrong, as it is about a filmmaker trying to make a documentary about a famous retiring actress, and basically while they interview her, the stories she tells take form and we relive her life and career. To be fair, the opening of the film was a little complicated, excuse the storm outside, as it takes a while to get used to this narrative structure. But as soon as I was into that world, I loved the ride and I did shed a tear towards the end. The death of Satoshi Kon was such a big loss to cinema, and the impact of his work is so strongly visible in the Hollywood works that clearly took big inspiration. Next, I watched How It Ends, a film that had been on my watch list for the longest time because it stars Kaylee Spaney, who I really like, but in the end, the movie wasn't good at all. It's literally the story of a woman walking around a neighborhood on the day of the end of the world, and she stops to talk to various people in her life, family, friends, exes, before this meteorite crashes on Earth. The premise is interesting, but the execution screams cheap YouTube vlog you made during COVID lockdown, which they kind of did. The whole world is supposed to end and people are just chilling in their gardens while this woman just turns up to chat with them. The streets are empty with this really boring flat cinematography, and she just walks from house to house to have these random conversations without any emotion about the end of the world about to happen, with a sort of SNL style cast and comedy. Another movie with a very flat tone but which I think boasts itself as being better than it was is Forbidden Fruit, which has zero original ideas in it. Take The Craft, mix it with Mean Girls, Jawbreaker, Jennifer's Body, Scream Queens, American Horror Story, add quotes from The Devil Wears Prada and TikTok memes, and you get this totally flat story of a group of friends who let a new co-worker into their cult until this woman confronts what's actually going on within this little group. I don't mind campy movies. I don't even mind movies which have a lot of references and homages to other films, but there was no original ideas or story at the base of this movie. And in addition to that, the production quality was cheap, the delivery was atrocious. Some of the jokes might have been funny, but they just weren't original. In some scenes, I knew the whole setup was leading to a specific pop culture reference, TikTok meme, movie quote, just a very TikTok movie. And the third movie I really didn't like this month was Mother Mary, which I found as incredibly self-indulgent, 2 hours of people talking in metaphors, and nothing more. In this movie, Anne Hathaway portrays a famous singer who, after an accident on stage and a break from her career, is returning with her big comeback concert, and she's asking her old close friend and designer to create a dress for the event, but there is clearly a lot left unsolved between the two, and then it gets very weird from there. I'll leave it at that to avoid spoilers. There is a whole standalone explanation video about the movie on my channel if you've seen it. Otherwise, I wouldn't particularly recommend watching it. Then I finally watched Resurrection, a film I was really hoping would come to our cinema. It looks like there was no more hope. The distribution in Italy was extremely limited, but then it did come for like 2 screenings. The reason why I was waiting for a cinema release was because everybody was going on about the visuals of this movie. And they were right. This film is 3 hours of feast for the eyes. It's set in a dystopian future in which humanity doesn't dream and those who do are considered delirious. The movie follows one of these people reliving his life in a crazy, visually stunning, decade-spanning story. I am so happy I got to witness it. Another movie I had nearly given up hope on seeing at the cinema was Kokuho, but it finally arrived, and boy am I happy I got to see it on the big screen. It's the story of a child from a mafia family who is taken under the wing of a theatre actor, and he grows within this very competitive, in the spotlight world, while dealing with the fact that although talented, he is not from an artistic family and his criminal background will always be an element haunting him. If you're interested in more information about this film, this is one of the ones for which there is a standalone review on my channel. Next, I watched Close Up, a 90s docufiction which features real courtroom footage, and then everybody involved in the case basically agreed to reenact all the events that led up to this. It's the story of a man accused of impersonating a famous director in order to con a family, but through the lengthy court proceedings, we dig deeper into his life and reasoning, and it's an interesting take on empathy, forgiveness, authenticity, and how people are more complex than just one action. I then watched Hope. There is a longer review of this film on my channel, a movie I was influenced into watching from a TikTok video. I know, but in the end I guess it was worth it because I liked the movie. Hope is based on a true story of a rape and everything that follows that, physically, economically, socially, psychologically. It doesn't use a vague, abstract concept. It covers the realistic, concrete, down-to-earth effects that a crime like this has. It covers the actual physical damage, the practical high costs of medically recovering, how families are broken, everything. It might not have groundbreaking editing or cinematography, but it is an eye-opener. I then watched Good Boy, also known as Heel, of which again there is a review on my channel if you're interested. It's a pretty bizarre movie about this family who keeps a guy chained in their house with the idea that he needs to be reformed. Of course, as the story moves on, there is a lot more to be explored, both about the captive and the captors, and I found it an interesting take on the usual kidnapping story in which the victim is usually very likable, which is definitely not the case here. I then watched Interview with the Vampire, a film which is crazy I hadn't seen yet given the amount of gothic horror movies and vampire movies I have seen. In this movie, Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt play 2 vampires. To be specific, Tom Cruise plays a vampire who bites and transforms Brad Pitt, theoretically offering him a better life, but which instead turns into a lot of regret and anger as the story moves on. There are many better vampire movies out there, but I think it's always interesting to see Tom Cruise in an extremely different role from the ones we usually associate him with. I then rewatched Urban Legends: The Final Cut because I was working on it at work. The last time I'd seen this film was years ago on a dodgy DVD when I was watching the saga. It's not as iconic as the first Urban Legends film, but some of the kills are even scarier. For example, the kidney one or the snuff movie scene. These movies are 90s slashers based on a serial killer who murders following urban legends. They're campy, silly, but also often don't hold back. Then towards the end of the month, I completed all of Sean Baker's filmography by watching his debut film, 4 Letter Words. It's not half as good as his later works, but it does have many of his peculiarities, his cinema realism with very down-to-earth locations, just a group of friends at a house party. I made an interesting video ranking all of Sean Baker's movies a couple of weeks back, and I talk about it a bit more there. I then watched Remarkably Bright Creatures, which for being a Netflix movie is actually not that bad. So while waiting to watch and cry at Sheep Detectives, I decided to watch and cry at a talking octopus voiced by Alfred Molina. Yes, Doc Ock. In Remarkably Bright Creatures, two very different characters, an elderly cleaning lady and a young aspiring musician, cross paths while working at an aquarium and discover they can help one another a lot more than expected, as we all have the same life problems at whatever stage we are. I then started watching 100 Steps, about Peppino Impastato, an activist in the fight against the mafia who was then murdered by the Sicilian mafia. But I still have to finish it, so I'm not going to talk about it yet. And then just a couple of days ago, I watched Netflix's new true crime documentary, The Crash. Now, Netflix is particularly well known for its true crime content, starting from back in the day when they would try to cover really peculiar cases like Don't Fuck with Cats or The Keepers. The Crash is the story of a young woman, a girl really, who was the only survivor of a horrible car crash in which her friends on board died, but the investigation into it seems to suggest there was foul play involved. If you're interested in the topic, and it's covered from beginning to end in the film, I'm just more disgusted, shocked about how some parents are raising their kids and how social media is just rotting our brains. Now for series instead, I don't really watch that many. I stick more to short, limited series, mini-series. I did get to watch the second season of Beef. I wanted to watch it because it stars Oscar Isaac and Kaylee Spaney, but I wasn't sure if I had to watch the first season first, but then I read that the two have nothing to do with one another, and in the end I loved it. It follows the story of the employees of a golf club, a rich people club, who one day catch their boss in an unpleasant moment and hold this over his head while trying to climb the social ladder, even if this leads to an avalanche of consequences. Then this month I kept on watching Euphoria, as it's a series I've been watching right from day one, and this morning I watched the final episode as it was released just a couple of days ago on May 31st. This series is so extensive, it's very hard to just summarize it in a couple of sentences. If you're interested, there is a more in-depth video on my channel. In brief, I felt like there was a lot missing in this final season. Some important characters' storylines were butchered. I think it's also understandable as so much time has passed since the beginning of the series, even just from the previous season, which was a whopping 4 years ago. Lead actors passed away in real life, child actors are now A-listers. There are probably a million scheduling, bureaucratic production issues going on behind the scenes. It's all a bit complicated, but I've been affectionate to watching this avalanche move in front of me over the years and not being able to look away from it. But I think that's everything I watched this month. Now I would like to hear from you. What have you been watching? What did you love? What did you hate? Let me know everything with a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.